Oh my God.
The sun was dying. Red and angry, it fell toward the horizon like a sick animal looking for somewhere to rest. In the small town of Dust Haven, where buildings were made of wood that had forgotten its color and streets were rivers of sand, an old man walked alone. His name was Thomas, and he was 73 years old. He walked slow because his legs hurt. He walked slow because he had nowhere to go. He walked slow because he wanted to remember every step, knowing this might be his last walk through this town that had raised him, broken him, and finally forgotten him. Thomas had nothing. No family, no money, no home. He owned only a small bag with 2 shirts, a blanket, and a photograph of a woman whose name he whispered sometimes when he thought no one could hear. Her name was Elizabeth. She had left him 30 years ago, not by choice, by death. And Thomas had never found a reason to smile since that day. For 2 weeks, he had walked the streets of Dust Haven, doing small jobs for food. He fixed fences for the hardware store owner. He chopped wood for the blacksmith. He cleaned the church where the preacher didn't remember his name. Each job gave him just enough coins for 1 meal. Each meal kept him alive, just enough to wonder why. On this day, the day the sun was dying red and angry, Thomas decided something. He would walk into the desert. He would walk until his legs stopped working. He would sit down and wait for the ending to come. No pain, no sadness. Just the desert and the sky and finally some peace. He left town as the light turned purple. The desert at night was cold in a way that made your bones hurt. Thomas walked for 2 hours, his feet finding the old trader's path that used to connect Dust Haven to bigger towns. But those bigger towns didn't exist anymore. Everything was dying. Everything was leaving. Just like everyone had left him. He found a small canyon, rocky and hidden from the main path. There was a dry well here, a place where people used to stop for water, but that was long ago. Thomas sat down beside it, his back against the cold stone. He pulled his blanket around his shoulders and watched the stars come out. One by one, they appeared like small lights in a dark room. Thomas counted them. 47 stars, he thought. Then he forgot what number he was on and started again. 17 stars, then lost count again. It didn't matter. Nothing mattered anymore. That's when he heard the sound. It was far away at first. A soft sound, a tired sound. The sound of something heavy walking on rocks. Thomas lifted his head. In the darkness, he couldn't see much, but he could hear it coming closer. Slower and slower, like something that was hurt. Who's there? Thomas called out. His voice sounded strange, rough and empty, like a well that hadn't been used in years. No answer came back. Just the sound of hooves on stone getting closer. Then he saw it. A horse, old like him, thin like hunger, limping on its front left leg. The horse walked into the small canyon and stopped when it saw Thomas. They looked at each other for a long time. 2 old creatures. 2 living things that the world had forgotten. The horse was brown, almost gray, with white on its face. Its ribs showed through its skin. Its eyes were tired, but they were kind eyes. It looked at Thomas the way Elizabeth used to look at him, like he was worth something. Like he mattered. "It's okay," Thomas whispered. "I'm not going to hurt you." The horse took 1 small step forward, then another. It was limping badly. The front left leg could barely hold weight. Thomas could see now that the horse had an old saddle hanging loose from its back, like the saddle had been sitting there for days and days. The saddle was empty. No rider, just leather and dust and emptiness. Thomas slowly stood up. Every bone in his body hurt, but he stood up anyway. The horse didn't run away. It just watched him. "Where did you come from, old friend?" Thomas asked. "Where is your person?" The horse took another step. Now it was close enough that Thomas could reach out and touch it. Carefully, very carefully, he put his hand on the horse's neck. The skin was hot. The hair was thick with dust and dirt. The horse's heart was beating fast, scared and tired and lost. "You're lost like me," Thomas said. "You don't know where to go either." The horse made a small sound, not quite a neigh, just a soft noise like a sigh, like it understood, like it was telling Thomas something. Thomas looked at the horse's hurt leg. There was a cut there, a bad cut. Something sharp had caught the skin, and the wound was trying to close, but was getting infected. The leg was swollen. The horse was hurting. Without thinking about it, without deciding to, Thomas did something. He tore a piece of his blanket, the only blanket he owned. He found the small bottle of water he had carried from town. He wet the cloth and carefully, very carefully, washed the horse's wound. The horse stood still. It didn't kick. It didn't pull away. It just let Thomas help it. "It's going to be okay," Thomas whispered. "I'll take care of you, and maybe you can help me too." The horse closed its eyes while Thomas worked. And something happened in that canyon, under the stars, between an old man and an old horse. Something broke open inside Thomas that had been closed for 30 years. A feeling, a reason, something that felt like purpose. When Thomas finished, he led the horse to the dry well. He gave it the last of his water. The horse drank slowly, carefully. Then it stood beside Thomas, close enough that they could touch. For the first time in 30 years, Thomas wasn't alone. For the first time since Elizabeth died, he had something to care for. "We'll figure it out together," Thomas said. "You and me. Two old broken things." The horse rested its tired head against his shoulder. And the old man did not walk into the dark desert to end his life. Instead, he held his new friend and waited for the sun to rise again.
When the sun came up, Thomas was still awake. He hadn't slept. Instead, he sat beside the horse all night, listening to its breathing, making sure it was still alive. Sometime around midnight, the horse had put its head down and rested against Thomas. The old man didn't move. He didn't want to break the spell. He didn't want to lose this moment. Now, as the orange light painted the canyon walls, Thomas could finally see the horse clearly. It was worse than he thought. Not just thin, sick thin, the kind of thin that comes from days and days without proper food. The horse's ribs were like wooden slats under its brown skin. Its hooves were cracked and uneven, and the cut on its front leg was deeper than Thomas had seen in the dark. But the horse was alive, and it looked at Thomas with those kind eyes. "Come on, old friend," Thomas said, standing up slowly. "We need to find you something to eat." The horse struggled to stand. Its hurt leg shook. Thomas put his arm under the horse's neck and helped it up. Together, they walked out of the canyon. It took a long time, maybe an hour, but they moved together step by step toward the town. Thomas knew the desert around Dust Haven. He had walked these paths for 50 years. There was a place about a mile away, a place where wild grass still grew near an underground spring. It wasn't much, but it was something. The horse needed grass. The horse needed water. The horse needed to not die. They walked slowly. The horse limped. Thomas limped too, though for different reasons. Two old, broken creatures, moving together under the hot morning sky. When they reached the grassy place, the horse drank from the spring like it had been living in the desert for weeks. It probably had been. Thomas sat down and watched the horse eat the dry grass, and he realized something. He was not thinking about ending his life anymore. He was thinking about water. He was thinking about food. He was thinking about tomorrow. The horse needed him. That was new. That was everything. Thomas had a small knife in his bag. He used it to cut long grass and pile it beside the horse. The horse ate everything he cut. It ate like it had forgotten what food tasted like. Thomas kept cutting grass until his hands hurt too much to continue. Then he sat down and watched the sun move across the sky. Around noon, Thomas heard something. Voices, coming from the direction of town. His heart jumped. He couldn't go back to town. People there knew he was leaving. If they found him, they would ask questions. They would try to help him in ways that felt like pity. They would give him small jobs and small money out of kindness, and he would see in their eyes that they thought he was a burden, an old man taking up space, taking up air. Thomas stood up and looked around. The canyon. They could hide in the canyon, but the horse was hurt. It couldn't run. It couldn't move fast. Thomas waited. The voices got closer. He could see dust rising from the main path. 3 riders. Coming from town. Coming this way. The horse looked at Thomas, like it was asking what to do. Thomas did something then that surprised even himself. He didn't run. He didn't hide. He simply put his hand on the horse's neck and stood there calm, waiting. The 3 riders came closer. They were young men, maybe 20 years old, cowboys from one of the ranches. They slowed down when they saw Thomas and the horse. "Old man," one of them called out. "That your horse?" Thomas didn't answer right away. He was looking at the horse, thinking. Then he said, "No, but he needs help, and I'm helping him." The cowboys rode closer. They looked at the horse. They looked at Thomas. One of them smiled. "That horse belongs to Jacob McKinney," the middle rider said. "He disappeared 3 weeks ago. We've been looking for him all over the territory. McKinney rode him out to check the north fence and never came back. We found his wagon broken about 10 miles from here." Thomas didn't say anything. "You find his horse?" the third rider asked. "He found me," Thomas said simply. "Last night, in the canyon. He was hurt. He was lost. I gave him water. I cleaned his wound. That's all." The cowboys talked quietly among themselves. Then the first rider said, "Well, old man, you did a good thing. This horse is worth money. And Jacob McKinney's family has been worried sick. They put up a reward for anyone who found him or his horse." Thomas looked at the horse. He looked at its tired eyes. He looked at the hurt leg he had bandaged with cloth from his blanket. "How much reward?" Thomas asked. $200, the rider said. $200. That was more money than Thomas had seen in 5 years. That was enough to buy a small place. Enough to live on for a whole year. Enough to stop being hungry. But it meant giving up the horse. Thomas closed his eyes. He had found the horse last night. And already, the horse was his only reason to wake up. Already, the horse was the thing that made his heart beat. Already, he loved this animal. "I need to think," Thomas said. "Not much thinking needed," the middle rider said, not unkindly. "You found him. You get the money. Easy." "The horse is hurt," Thomas said. "His leg? It's infected. He needs care. Real care. Not just money." The first rider got off his horse. He walked over and looked at the horse's leg. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "You did good work here, old man. This leg could have turned bad. Real bad. You cleaned it. You saved him." Thomas nodded slowly. "Tell you what," the first rider said. "McKinney's ranch is about 5 miles from here. I know the family. They're good people. Jacob was good people too. He was a good man. They'll take care of this horse. And they'll pay you fair. Fair enough that you could use that money." Thomas looked at the horse. The horse looked at Thomas. Can I bring him to them myself?" Thomas asked. "I don't want him scared. I don't want him alone." The 3 riders looked at each other. Then the first one smiled. "Yeah, old man," he said. "I think that would be okay. Come on. We'll ride slow. We'll stay with you. We'll make sure he gets there safe." Thomas took the horse's halter. Together, they started walking toward the ranch. The 3 riders rode beside them, slow and patient. And Thomas realized that maybe, just maybe, the world still had some kindness left. The horse walked beside him, trusting, and Thomas had a choice to make. The ranch was bigger than Thomas expected. White fences stretched across green fields. A large wooden house stood in the center, painted bright red with a wide porch. Behind it, there were barns and stables and places for animals to live. It was the kind of place that people built when they had hope, when they believed tomorrow would be better than today. The 3 cowboys rode ahead and told the family that Thomas was coming with a lost horse. By the time Thomas and the horse walked through the gate, the whole family was standing on the porch waiting. There was a woman, maybe 50 years old, with gray hair and kind lines around her eyes. There was a young girl, maybe 12, and there was an old man in a chair with a blanket over his legs. Even from far away, Thomas could see that the old man in the chair was hurt in some way. Maybe sick, maybe sad, maybe both. When they saw the horse, the woman put her hand over her mouth. The young girl started crying. "Jacob," the woman called out. "Oh, thank God. Thank God. She ran down the porch steps and came to the horse. She put her arms around the horse's neck and held it like she was holding her own son. And Thomas understood then. This horse wasn't just a horse. This horse was part of the family. "Where did you find him?" the woman asked, looking at Thomas with tears running down her face. "In the desert," Thomas said simply. "In a canyon. He was hurt. He was lost. But he was alive." The woman looked at Thomas for a long time. Her eyes were studying him, like she was trying to understand something very important. "What's your name?" she asked. "Thomas," he said. "Just Thomas." "I'm Mary McKinney," the woman said. "This is my daughter, Sarah, and this is my father, William. That's his horse. Jacob was my son." Thomas felt something cold move through his chest. "Was?" he asked quietly. Mary's eyes filled with more tears. She put her hand on the horse's face and touched its nose gently. "Jacob died 3 weeks ago," she said. "A fever. It came very fast. One day he was fine. The next day he was burning up. By the third day he was gone." Sarah, the young girl, started crying harder. She came and hugged the horse and put her face against its neck. "The horse ran away the night Jacob died," Mary continued. "We think he heard Jacob calling out in his sleep. We think he was scared. We've been looking for him ever since. But we didn't think we'd find him alive." Thomas looked at the horse's kind eyes, the horse's tired face, and Thomas suddenly understood. The horse had lost its person, just like Thomas had lost Elizabeth. The horse was alone, just like Thomas was alone. "He was hurt," Thomas said. "The leg. It was infected. But he's going to be okay now." "Come inside," Mary said. "You need food. You need to rest. The reward is yours." But Thomas didn't move. He was looking at the horse. The horse was looking back at him. "I don't want the reward," Thomas said. Everything went quiet. Even the wind seemed to stop. "What?" Mary asked. "I don't want the money," Thomas said again. I'm glad he's home. I'm glad you found him." Sarah looked at Thomas with surprise. The old man in the chair, William, was watching Thomas very carefully. "Why would you give up $200? Mary asked. Thomas didn't have a good answer. He just knew that the moment the horse walked through the gate, something changed. The horse was home. This was the horse's place. These were the horse's people. Thomas was just someone who found him, someone who helped for one night. But it hurt. Oh, it hurt so much. "The horse needs to be here," Thomas said, "with people who love him. That's what matters." Mary studied Thomas again. Then she smiled a sad smile. "Come inside anyway," she said. "Please, I need to tell you something." Inside the house, it was cool and quiet. Mary gave Thomas water and bread and cheese. It was the best food he'd eaten in years. Sarah sat beside the horse outside, talking to it softly, telling it everything that had happened while it was gone. "My son was a good man," William, the old man in the chair, said to Thomas. "The best man I ever knew. He loved that horse more than he loved anything in the world, even more than he loved his own life." Thomas didn't say anything. He just listened. "Jacob used to say that the horse understood things," William continued. "That when he was sad, the horse knew. When he was happy, the horse knew. They were connected, those two, not like a man and an animal, like two parts of the same soul." Thomas thought about the night before, how the horse had found him in the canyon, how it had stood beside him all night, how it had trusted him. "The horse came to you," William said, "when he needed someone. That was an accident. That was the horse knowing. That was the horse choosing." Thomas looked up at William. "My son is gone," William said, "but his horse is alive. And I think my son sent that horse to find someone who needed finding too." Thomas felt something break open inside him, something that had been locked tight for 30 years. "I was going to die," Thomas whispered. "Last night, I was going to walk into the desert and wait to die." "I know," William said. "I can see it in your eyes. I can see it in the way you stand. I know that look. I had it once a long time ago, when I lost my wife." Mary came back into the room then. She sat beside William and held his hand. "We have a small house on this ranch," Mary said. "We used to use it for the ranch hands who worked here. But no one lives there now. And we need someone to take care of the horse, someone to make sure he's healthy, someone to be with him." Thomas looked at Mary, then at William, then at the window where he could see Sarah sitting with the horse, talking to it like an old friend. "You want me to stay?" Thomas asked. I want you to stay, Mary said. I want you to take care of Jacob's horse. And I want the horse to take care of you. Thomas didn't answer. He couldn't. He was crying. For the first time in 30 years, tears were running down his face. Not sad tears. Not exactly. But tears that meant something. Tears that meant he was alive. Really alive. Outside, the horse turned and looked at Thomas through the window. And Thomas knew. The horse had found him for a reason. The horse had chosen him. Just like William said, the horse had saved his life. And now Thomas would save the horse's life, over and over again, for as long as they both lived. 3 months passed. Thomas had never lived anywhere as good as the small house on the McKinney ranch. It had 2 rooms, a roof that didn't leak, and a window that looked out toward the fields where the horse ran free. The McKinneys gave him clothes, food, and everything he needed. But more than that, they gave him something better. They gave him purpose. Every morning, Thomas woke before the sun. He would walk to the stable where Jacob's horse lived. The horse always knew when Thomas was coming. It would make a soft sound, not an A, just a gentle greeting, and turn its head toward the door. "Good morning, old friend," Thomas would say, the same words every day. And the horse would nuzzle against his shoulder like it was saying hello back. The horse's name was Storm. That's what Jacob had called him. Thomas learned this from Sarah, the young girl, who spent almost as much time with the horse as Thomas did. Sarah would sit on a log near the stable and tell Thomas stories about her brother and Storm. How Jacob found Storm as a wild horse in the mountains. How Jacob spent 2 years teaching Storm to trust him. How they were inseparable. "My brother said Storm was the only one who understood him," Sarah said one afternoon. When he was sad, Storm would stand very still and let Jacob put his head against his neck. When he was happy, Storm would run so fast, like he was happy too. Thomas listened to every word. He was learning about Jacob, learning about the man whose horse he now cared for, learning about the person who had loved this animal so much that even death couldn't break their bond. Storm's leg healed slowly. Thomas cleaned a wound every day with fresh water and cloth. He used herbs that Mary taught him, plants that helped wounds close and prevented infection. After 6 weeks, the swelling went down. After 8 weeks, Storm could put full weight on a leg again. After 12 weeks, Storm could run. The first time Storm ran fast, Thomas stood at the fence and watched. The horse ran across the open field, its brown body moving like water, its legs strong and sure. It was the most beautiful thing Thomas had ever seen. Sarah stood beside him, and they both had tears in their eyes. "Jacob can see this," Sarah whispered. "Wherever he is, Jacob can see Storm running again." Thomas believed her. The McKinney Ranch was a place where hard work never stopped, but the work felt different to Thomas than it had anywhere else. It felt like it mattered. William, the old man in the chair, would sit on the porch and give Thomas jobs to do. Fixing fences, building a new shed, clearing rocks from the fields. Thomas's body hurt, but it hurt in a good way. The kind of pain that means you did something real. One day, William called Thomas over while he was working. "Sit," William said, pointing to a chair on the porch. Thomas sat, wondering if he had done something wrong. "I've been watching you," William said. "For 3 months, I've been watching. You work hard. You take care of that horse like it's the most important thing in the world." "It is," Thomas said simply. "Yes," William agreed. "I think it is. For you." They sat in silence for a while. Thomas could hear Storm in the distance, making those soft horse sounds. He could hear the wind moving through the grass. He could hear life happening all around him. "I lost my wife," William said suddenly. 40 years ago. She died giving birth to Mary. I thought I would never want to live again. I thought the world had ended." Thomas listened. This was the first time William had told him something so personal. "But Mary was alive," William continued, "and she needed me. So I woke up every morning, and I did my work. And slowly, very slowly, I started to want to live again. Not because the sadness went away, but because I had someone to live for." William looked at Thomas with old, wise eyes. "You understand that now," William said. "With that horse, you understand that love is stronger than sadness." Thomas felt tears coming, but he didn't try to stop them this time. "I was going to die," Thomas said. 3 months ago, I was going to walk into the desert and never come back. I know, William said. And that horse saved your life. But now you need to understand something else. Now you need to save his life too. That's how it works. We save each other. One evening, something happened that changed everything again. Thomas was walking Storm around the ranch, letting him stretch his legs after being in the stable all day. They were walking slowly, just enjoying the cool air and the dying light of sunset. Storm was calm, happy, healthy. Then Storm stopped. His ears went straight up. He turned his head toward the mountains in the distance and made a sound Thomas had never heard before. A sound like calling, like remembering. What is it, boy? Thomas asked. Storm pulled gently on the rope, wanting to go toward the mountains. Thomas understood then. Even though Jacob was dead, even though Storm lived here and was cared for, Storm still remembered his old life. Still remembered the wild mountains where he was born. Still remembered being free. For a moment, Thomas felt afraid. He thought maybe Storm wanted to leave. Maybe Storm wanted to go back to his old life and forget about Thomas. But then Storm turned and looked at Thomas. And the horse's eyes were not looking at the mountains. The horse's eyes were looking at Thomas. Choosing Thomas. Choosing to stay. Storm turned away from the mountains and walked back toward the stable. Back toward home. Back toward Thomas. That night, Thomas sat outside Storm's stable under the stars. He thought about Elizabeth. He thought about how she had died and left him alone. He thought about how he had wanted to die too. He thought about that night in the canyon when he decided his life was over. But then Storm had come, and Storm had chosen him, and Thomas had found a reason to wake up. Thank you, Thomas whispered to the sky, to Elizabeth, to God, to whatever had brought that horse to him. Thank you for sending him to me. From inside the stable, Storm made that soft sound, that gentle greeting, that sound that meant, I'm here, I'm with you, you're not alone. Thomas wiped his tears and smiled. For the first time in 30 years, he was smiling and it felt real. He was alive, really, truly alive, and he had a horse to love, and a horse who loved him back. And that was everything. 1 year had passed since Thomas walked into the desert planning to die. The man who stood in the McKinney Ranch now was not the same man who had arrived broken and empty. Thomas's face had color. His body had strength. His eyes had light. He moved like someone who had reasons to move. Someone who had things to do. Someone who mattered. Storm was beautiful again, too. The infection was long gone. His coat was shiny and brown like polished wood. His legs were strong and fast. He ate well. He played in the fields. He was healthy. But more than that, he was happy. And everyone on the ranch could see it. Thomas had become part of the McKinney family. Not as a worker anymore, but as family. He ate dinner at their table. He sat on the porch with William and listened to stories about the old days. He taught Sarah how to ride Storm properly, how to move with the horse, not against it, how to understand what the horse was feeling, how to listen with your heart. But on a cold morning in December, something happened that tested everything Thomas had learned about love and letting go. A man came to the ranch on horseback. He was a rich man. Thomas could tell by his clean clothes and his expensive saddle. The man asked to speak to William. They talked on the porch for a long time, and Thomas watched from the stable, feeling nervous without knowing why. When the man left, William called Thomas over. That man wants to buy Storm, William said quietly. Thomas felt his heart stop. He's a collector, William continued. He buys famous horses. He heard about Storm, how Jacob found him wild in the mountains, how he disappeared the night Jacob died, how he survived in the desert alone, how you found him and saved his life. The man thinks Storm is a legend. He wants to own a legend. No, Thomas said immediately. Storm is not for sale. He's offering a lot of money, William said. More money than you could make in 10 years. Enough to buy your own small ranch. Enough to live comfortable for the rest of your life. Thomas shook his head. I don't want his money. Storm belongs here. Storm belongs with me. William smiled a small smile. That's what I told him, William said. I told him Storm is not for sale. Not for any amount of money. Thomas felt relief wash over him like cool water. But then William said something that made Thomas's blood go cold. But the man said he would come back, William continued. He said he would offer more money. He said Storm is too valuable to stay on a small ranch. He said Storm should be in a place where people can see him. A famous place. a place where Storm can become a real legend. Thomas didn't sleep that night. He went to the stable and stood with Storm, running his hands over the horse's neck, feeling the heartbeat underneath the skin. "I won't let him take you," Thomas whispered. "I promise. I won't let anyone take you." But inside, Thomas was scared. He knew that rich men always got what they wanted. He knew that money could buy almost anything. He knew that one day, someone more powerful than him might come and take Storm away. And for the first time since finding Storm, Thomas understood something terrible. Love meant being willing to lose the thing you loved. 2 weeks later, the rich man came back. This time he brought a lawyer and a contract. The offer was even bigger than before. Enough money to make Thomas and the McKinneys rich. Enough money to change their lives completely. The man sat on the porch and made his case. He talked about how Storm could be famous. How people could come from all over the country to see the legendary horse. How Storm could be immortal, living forever in stories and paintings and songs. "That horse is special," the man said. "Everyone who hears the story knows it. The boy who loved him so much he called from his deathbed. The horse who ran into the desert rather than live without him. The old man who found him dying and gave him life again. That's a story people need to hear. That's a story that should live forever." William, Mary, and Sarah all looked at Thomas. It was his choice. Everyone knew it. Storm was his responsibility, his love. Thomas walked out to the porch. He looked at the man. He looked at the contract. He looked at the number written there, a number so big it would change everything. Then Thomas said no. "Why?" the man asked, confused. "Why would you say no?" "Because Storm is not a legend," Thomas said. "Storm is real. He's alive. He's here. He's mine, and I'm his. That's what matters. Not stories. Not paintings. Not songs. Just the truth. Just the love between one horse and one man." The man stood up, angry. "You're a fool," he said. "You're throwing away a fortune." "Maybe," Thomas said, "but Storm gets to stay alive the way he wants to stay alive. Not in a fancy place with fancy people looking at him. Here, with me, free to run in the fields, free to be happy. That's worth more than all your money." The man left. He didn't come back. That night, William called Thomas to the porch. The old man had something in his hands. A photograph. "This is Jacob," William said, showing Thomas the picture. "This is my grandson. This is the boy who loved Storm more than anything." Thomas looked at the photograph. A young man with kind eyes. Eyes like Storm's eyes. Eyes that understood things. "I want you to know something," William said. "I think Jacob sent Storm to you. I think, somehow, Jacob knew you would need each other. I think my grandson is still taking care of this ranch. Still taking care of his horse. Through you." Thomas held the photograph carefully, like it was made of glass. "Storm is a legend," William continued. "Not because rich men say so. Because of what he means. He's a legend because he shows us that love is stronger than death. That loyalty lasts forever. That even the smallest, oldest, most broken creatures can find reason to live." William put his hand on Thomas's shoulder. "You're a legend too, Thomas," William said. "You saved Storm, but Storm saved you first. That's the real story. That's the story people should know." Years passed. Thomas lived on the McKinney Ranch until he was 80 years old. Storm lived to be 32, an old age for a horse. They grew old together, both of them bent and slow and tired. But they were never alone, never without each other. When Thomas finally died, peacefully, in his sleep, with Storm standing in the stall beside him, the whole town came to his funeral. They talked about the old man who had found the lost horse. They talked about his devotion, his love, his second chance at life. And they talked about Storm, how the horse had saved a man's life, how the horse understood love, how the horse had been faithful until the very end. Sarah, now grown with children of her own, kept Storm until the horse died too. And when Storm was finally laid to rest, Sarah placed the photograph of Jacob beside the grave. The McKinneys kept the small house where Thomas had lived, and they told the story to every person who came to the ranch. The story of an old man and a forgotten horse. The story of how two broken things found each other in the desert and became whole.